an enemy to our scene and set it up so that if Blocky hits the enemy, sound will play and the scene will reset. So the first thing we need to do is add a new actor. So I'll click on actor types and go ahead and create our new enemy actor. And we'll just call it enemy 1 in case we want to add more enemies later on. Now we'll add the animation. We'll call it, doesn't matter what we call this, we'll call it flashy. And we're going to add some images. We're going to create an animated enemy. So I'll choose the first image, add that. Then I'll click here to add the next frame of the animation. And I'll choose the second image. And we'll add one more frame to our animation. And there's the third one. So click add. And if you look up here, this is what the animation produces. We'll get this kind of pulsating evil enemy going. Next thing we need to do is we have to add an enemy to a group. And if we go over here to the groups, we could see there's no enemy group, and we want to create an enemy group. So what we're going to do is click on edit groups, and I'm going to create a new group. I'm going to call this one enemies. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to determine what type of actors or elements of the game will be recognized as colliding with this group. So we're going to say enemies are going to collide with players. And I'll click OK. So if I go back here, I still need to add my enemy to the enemies group, so I'll go ahead and do that. If I go back to groups again, you can see that enemies will be recognized as colliding with players by the game. Now if I go up to players, you'll see that by default players can collide with tiles, and we'll talk about tiles later, but it also is turned on that players can collide with enemies. So let's get out of that. Let's go to physics, and we're going to do the same thing we did with Blocky. We're going to say change can rotate to no, and change affected by gravity to no. And now we'll go ahead and save it. Look at the appearance, make sure everything looks okay, and we'll close that tab up. Now we're going to go to our scene, and we're going to add some enemies to it. So if I go over here, you can see we've got Blocky right there. And let's move Blocky around, which we can do by using this arrow tool. Let's have them start up here in the corner, toward the corner. Now under actors, we'll see our enemy there. So we're going to click on that, and we'll just place some enemies around the screen. And there we have it. So let's save our game. And let's test it to see what happens. There we go. So I'll start moving Blocky around. Whoop. If you noticed, Blocky's running into him and pushing him, but we don't want them to be able to move. So let's close that off. And we'll go back to our actors. Oop. Open up enemies, and we'll go back to physics. And what we want to do is we don't want the normal behavior for this actor. We want to set it so that he can't move. Let's save that. And we'll test it. There we go. So Blocky runs into him, but nothing happens at this point because we haven't written any code telling the game what to do when Blocky runs into one of the enemies. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we'll close up enemy and we'll go to actor behaviors. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can write the code or behaviors for how things interact with the game. I like to include all the code in the actor. So because what I'm going to be checking for is I'm going to be checking to see if Blocky collides with an enemy, I'm going to add that code to Blocky. So to do that, I'm going to go up to Add Event, go down to Collisions, and there's a bunch of different choices. But I'm going to check, I'm going to have the game check for whether or not Blocky collides with a member of a group. And in this case, the group is going to be enemies. So I'll change this name to enemy collide, so I know this is the code for when it collides, when Blocky collides with an enemy. Now over here under scene and game flow, I'm going to reload the game. So I'll grab this bit of code, and later on we'll learn how to do other things when Blocky collides. But for now we're just going to fade out and kind of reset the game. So I'm going to say instead of fade out, let's do blur out. And just say 0.2 seconds and then fade in for 0.2 seconds. We can adjust that later if we want. So I'll save it and let's test it. So if I move Blocky around now, okay, so there we have it. That's how you can add an enemy and then write some code that tells the game to do something when Blocky collides with another actor, in this case our enemies.